Welcome to a Community Partners interview where we explore the organizations, opportunities, and resources that look to make change in our daily lives. I'm your host, Davy Au, and you're listening to Voices for Ability Radio, all abilities, all the time. Today, I'm joined by Karen-Ann Xavier, the Principal Administrator for Able Sail Toronto. Able Sail Toronto is dedicated to providing people living with a physical disability the opportunity to enjoy sailing. We know from experience the health and social benefits that adults, youth, and children with physical disabilities can gain from sailing. Able Sail Toronto exists to enable access to sport and healthy activities, particularly for people living on a fixed income, as many of our members do. Sailing is a versatile sport that easily adapts to the needs of people with physical disabilities, and it levels the playing field. Able Sail strives to give their members a sense of independence, pride, and self-sufficiency. Thank you for joining us today, Karen Ann.
Thank you for having me, Davy.
It's our pleasure. It's my pleasure. Now, before we get started, seeing as you've been about the show before, for our listeners who are just joining who are just joining us for the very first time, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What inspired you to work at Able Sail and with individuals with disabilities as a whole?
It was one particular individual who roped me in, and she had a very charismatic personality, and really felt that I would be able to contribute in a way, and wanted me to become part of the family, and that's how it all started. It sort of went from there. That was in the early 2000s, and at the time, they were looking for someone who could be a race coach and also who could do boat maintenance. And it grew into many different things. And with Able Sail Toronto, what we're doing, not only providing the ability, the whole infrastructure for people to go sailing, it's also for people to be able to run it themselves. So people with the idea is that the people with physical disabilities, the members, you cannot be a board member unless you are a person with a physical disability. So that ensures that the needs are fulfilled for exactly, what is of benefit to everyone. And also, we support other clubs starting up to improve their infrastructure. So we're becoming more and more of a training center for other clubs to be able to improve their equipment, improve their processes. So sharing the love, really.
Absolutely, and there's nothing wrong. There's absolutely nothing wrong with sharing, as everything as the old saying goes, sharing is caring. Now that being said, more on the organization on Able Sail itself. In doing some research, at least from my standpoint, seeing as again I am the new guy, in my research into Able Sail, at least on your website, I noticed that you have a bunch of different programs and events coming up. Some of which I've noted include the Toronto Harbor License Course and the Harbor License Renewal Course. Do you think that you could tell us and our listeners a little bit about them and how they could go about applying to be part of them if they were interested?
The Able Sail Toronto is close to the island airport, so that means that there are certain guidelines and rules that need to be followed because of being close to that airport. And it's the same for other locations that have airports that are close to sailing areas. That is a requirement. That course is a requirement for when you are using sailboats in an area where there are different rules that have to be followed. So the to be able to operate a boat which has an engine, you have to have what's called a PCOC, personal watercraft license, which is a course that you can do online. And then you have to have a harbor license to be able to use a boat with an engine. So in our case, that would be our safety boat. So our safety boat is out on the water all the time while people are sailing. And that boat is working 5 days a week, from 9 to 5, constantly going to be able to operate that boat. That license is required. Some of our members do participate getting their licenses. It depends on their abilities. and their interest, of course. There's also other courses that are offered. I think it was last week, the VHF course, which is a radio course. So it's a type of shortwave radio that is used on the water for communicating amongst sailboats and to sailboats. And that course is taken by quite a few people. The springtime is usually the best time for taking these courses. There's also the marine grade first aid course. I think that was taught March the 5th. And that course is extremely popular and covers everything from hypothermia to overheating. In our case, we look at a lot of those kinds of things because we're close to the water. And I think that the more people that take these kinds of courses, the more you are going to be able to help in the event of an emergency and really participate in the event of an emergency. And I can say that it was probably about 3 years ago. I was bringing some equipment to the club, and there was someone who had taken a fall and had hit their head on the road, and I was able to use my first aid and help this lady until the police and the ambulance arrived. And it was I never really thought of I took the course because I thought it was an important thing to have, but I didn't realize that I'd really be putting it in play so soon after taking that course. So that is something that I think is a great thing to do. And from the sailing lesson standpoint, we have 16-foot sailboats called Martin 16. So they're two-person sailboats. And when you're out sailing, you're sailing with a companion. Most of the time, people like to go out sailing with a companion. If you're a very experienced sailor, then you can go out solo if you choose. So there's a few of our participants that go out solo, but most like to go out with somebody because of the conversation, the socialization, and it's fun. It's just plain fun. Then also you can learn a lot from that particular individual. We have sailing instructors as well that are people that will be using the safety boat most of the time, and they'll also be out on the water so that you can improve your sailing skills. You can learn basic sailing and you can improve your sailing skills and even go so far as to race. There's a number of our sailors that participate in racing regattas and have raced in various parts of the country, parts of Canada. There's a championship which is held once a year, and it's called Mobility Cup. It's a really fun event where people come from all over North America to race. Last year, it was held in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. And this year, the event is going to be held the last week of August in Montreal, Quebec. So that is a great thing to aspire to raise your skills up to that level by taking some additional lessons.
Well, and that is absolutely well. That is absolutely something to aspire to. I mean, I will say that I started out. I've always been personally myself a landlubber, for lack of a better term. But after hearing about all of this, yeah, my mind on sailing, despite my fear of water, has absolutely been changed just by hearing you rhyme all of this off. And I'm sure that many of our listeners, after hearing this, would definitely feel a lot more passionate now about getting out there on the water and getting more involved that way. Now, that being said, you mentioned something earlier about the Martin 16 sailboat. Do you think that you could tell us about how the boat wound up getting its name?
The Martin 16 sailboat was designed in the early 90s by a gentleman whose last name is Martin. His name is John Martin, and he lives in outside of Vancouver. He's quite a bit older now, and when he designed the boat, he wanted to create something that would be designed specifically for the purpose of accessible sailing because that was something that he really believed in. And he had a very close friend who was a person with disability. So he designed the boat and then provided that design to the what at that time was the Disabled Sailing Association of British Columbia. And that since has been transferred to an organization that was created a few years after that, which is the Able Sail Network of Canada. And the Able Sail Network of Canada is an organization that oversees and supports the clubs, the able sail clubs across the country, and of which there are 15 clubs across the country. And they go from the East Coast to the West Coast, so all the way across. And there are more clubs coming on board all the time. And I think that there was one that registered in that's in Nova Scotia last week. So there's lots of activity going on in the community, and it is a growth for more clubs, more sailors, more participation, which is very exciting.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I do agree. Very exciting. And if, say, for example, our listeners wanted to catch that excitement outside of the participation, you mentioned earlier that earlier about the Mobility Cup. If they wanted to catch the excitement of that event, is the Mobility Cup on TV at all?
There are interviews that happen, and so it wouldn't be shown like the full event, but there are interviews that happen every year at Mobility Cup. And so the website is mobilitycup.com. There you will be able to find on the media page interviews that have been done, some of them from done in the past. Also on our website, ablesailtoronto.com, on the media section, you'll see a list of interviews, some YouTube videos that are there, and you can actually see some of our sailboats. The sailboats that we use, the Martin 16, they've been modified significantly over the years. As technology advances, we keep improving the equipment and the design of the boat, so it is constantly being finessed, which is a beautiful thing. And also the new assistive devices that are being designed all the time. For example, we're going to be receiving some parts to start working on a new design of seat, which will help people with higher level disabilities. For example, people that are paralyzed from the neck down, to be able to sit comfortably with stability inside the sailboat, and working towards improving the comfort levels. We're also working on another piece of equipment, which we should be receiving at the end of April, which is an auto helm, which will help people that have less hand dexterity and hand strength be able to steer the boat with a device which will multiply their hand strength to make it easier for them to sail. So there's all kinds of interesting things that are going on. There's interesting things to see, even if you just wanted to come and see. We have an open house, which is May 31st, and that'll be at 1 p.m. So at National Yacht Club, that's our home base, and that is close to where the end of Bathurst, at the end of Bathurst, close to the water. That is a Saturday, May the 31st at 1 p.m. That'll go from 1 to 4, and we'll be demonstrating the equipment, and that's a lot of fun to come to as well.
Well, you heard it. You heard it here first, everyone. May 31st at 1 p.m. at the National Yacht Club. There's an open house going on where you can, where you can check out where you can check out all the equipment and see what's going on at Able Sail. That being said, um, Karen-Ann, you mentioned stuff. You mentioned many great things about what was it? The new assistive device, about these new assistive devices, getting the equipment needed. Getting the equipment needed to design sort of new seats or even auto helms for people who don't have that sort of extra strength in the arms. Let's say. If I may. When it comes to assigning these and other assistive devices, what's the process like for determining what's needed for a person?
That's a really good question. We do assessments for people So the first time they come down to the club, then they get assessed. We have a number of volunteers that are retired nurses, retired occupational therapists, physiotherapists, and we have a doctor who works with us as well. And what we do is assess the needs of the individual because every individual is different. And so what we try and do is figure out what kind of a seating arrangement, how they should sit in the boat, what do they need to get into the boat. We have what's called a Voyager transfer lift, which is something that is the same as what's used in hospitals that we use. It's a battery controlled device which raises and lowers the person out of their chair and gets them into the sailboat. And it's got a remote control, so if the participant wants to do it themselves, they can actually do it themselves. Some people do. Most of the time, they prefer to just do it as a group because it's more fun that way. That, in addition, there are different types of equipment, such as a windlass, which will help bring the sails in and let the sails out, which helps for people with less hand strength and they don't have gripping strength as much. So it helps multiply the strength. And with a push button, you can bring the sails in or let them go out. So, really, everything is on the table as to what the options are. We assess what the needs are. And if we need to get creative in coming up with something that makes it easier, then we do that as well.
And that is absolutely great to know. And I'm sure that many of our listeners and aspiring sailors out there are definitely would definitely take a lot away from your answer to from your most recent answer. So thank you for that. Now that being said, if a person wanted to volunteer or become a member of Able Sail, how would they go about doing that?
On our website, there is a section under membership to apply for membership. So if you're interested in joining Able Sail Toronto, then fill out the application form. At that point, then there is a meeting which is held usually over Zoom, which is a discussion of what your needs are and requirements, and to get a bit of an understanding beforehand. And then you do a registration for volunteers. Volunteers will apply to volunteer, submit their information on the website under the volunteer section. And in that section, there's a whole bunch of questions in that form with regards to what your interests are, because there's different roles that you could fulfill. So it gives you an idea of what the different roles are, and also helps as well if there's any particular skills that might be of great value, then that can be something that we can benefit from and work on projects. For example, there's one volunteer that's going to be working on a new design of a transfer bench. And that particular transfer bench is for people that are ambulatory. They can walk, but they need a little bit of help lowering themselves down to get into the sailboat. And we have one currently, and we're looking at a newer version of that same piece of equipment, which is lighter and slightly smaller. So it's a little bit more modular. And that is one of our volunteers that's going to be assembling that over the next couple of weeks.
Well, and that is absolutely amazing to know. Absolutely amazing to know. And yeah, and on that note, be it volunteer or otherwise, you mentioned without naming any names or getting too specific. Are there any sort of success stories that you could share with me? I mean, you kind of touched on one earlier about how you helped a person out who took a fall shortly after you took one of Able Sales courses. But are there any other similar or not so similar instances that you can share with us?
There is one of our members who has Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. She's been sailing with us for quite some time, and I had actually known her before she was diagnosed with ALS. And she communicates using a tablet or her cell phone, and uses hand signals for when she is sailing. And she is an avid sailor, goes out once a week, always has a smile, and And we have been constantly doing adaptations to allow her to continue, to enable her to have what she needs to be able to continue sailing. We had a gentleman who had had a recent amputation as a result of cancer, who has uh, never thought that he would be able to do sports again. And he is one of our wonderful members. And I think he and his wife are just about to have a baby any day now. So we're very excited about that. We have about 83% of our members have use wheelchairs, but not everybody does. So it could be a power wheelchair or a manual wheelchair. And we have people with all kinds of physical disabilities that we address. And the biggest thing is to enjoy yourself and have a smile. And when we see people smiling and having a good time and joking around, that's the sunshine in the world today that we all need more of.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's absolutely amazing to hear. I mean, and the fact that what's it, people can in many ways can even bounce back from circumstances that that could change their lives forever for the negative. It sounds to me like those people were able to make light of their situations and almost like rediscover themselves again through Able Sail and their programs and their service and these services. So and it goes without saying that I think that I think that not that I should say thank you, if anything, for all that you do for those people and all that you've offered them. So thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Now let's see. This next question I have for you, Karen-Ann, might be a little bit loaded, mind you, because everyone who's asked this question may answer it a little differently. Though, in your opinion, what is one thing that you see happening repeatedly to individuals with disabilities that shouldn't be happening, and how do we collectively go about stopping it?
That is a good question. Um, and I think that it's evolved a lot over the years. So when I first started doing working with people with physical disabilities, helping them, and it wasn't in the context necessarily of Able Sail Toronto. So this would be prior to Able Sail Toronto. I found that people were overlooked for participation, for inclusion in events, and also even just strictly in conversation. You know, if somebody was pushing somebody in a wheelchair, then someone one might talk above their heads to the other person and ignore the person who is perhaps the person who was interested in doing something in the first place. I think that's improved a lot over the years. Even the getting around is a lot easier now with public transit becoming more accessible. There's still a long way to go, but there are a great deal of changes that have been happening overall in our community. And also, people are expecting it more. So, accessible doors, for example, it's not only helpful for people with disabilities, but it could be helpful for a pregnant mom who's trying to get her groceries in the door or pushing a stroller. It could be helpful for anybody. And even people that are carrying items and need to get through the door, it's very helpful. So everything is improving the quality of life, not just for people with disabilities, but for everyone. Everyone improves. Ramps, it's helpful for everybody. And if we look at it that way, and I think people are starting to more look at things that way, it helps everybody, then it makes it possible to get to the next level. It used to be where people would say, "Oh, you're a real champion. You're such a fighter." Well, why have to be a fighter? Why have to be a champion? Why not just be like everybody else to have the same opportunities? I would like to see more people having jobs because I find that people with physical disabilities tend to be very faithful to their employer. They are a great employee to have. And so, why not make some accommodations and have a wonderful opportunity to hire somebody who will be a faithful and dedicated, hardworking employee? social events, more inclusion in social events, dance floors. Make a friggin' dance floor wider so that you could have people in wheelchairs dancing too, which is a beautiful thing to see. So, making the world a more beautiful place is including everyone, and it doesn't matter what their circumstances are, but just have everybody enjoying and living and sharing together. I think that at least is my vision for what the world is is should be. And I'd like to say that if I can make a difference for one person, then I'm doing something right. And if the next person can make a difference for somebody else, then we're doing something right. And if we all work towards doing something good for someone, it'll make us happy and make the other person happy too. Also, the world is a tough place right now. There's a lot of crazy things that are going on, and it can be very depressing for people to see some of these steps backwards that are happening in other parts of the world. If you can do something good for somebody, it'll make you feel a whole lot better. And let's just keep pushing forward here in our country for the things that we can do for everyone.
You heard Karen-Ann, everyone. Keep pushing forward, and let's strive for that country that we all that country, that vision that we all want. And now that being said, Karen-Ann, thank you for all those fantastic answers, and I'm sure that there's plenty more that we can talk about. However, seeing as we're nearing the end of our time together, if our listeners, were interested and still wanted some more information about Able Sales services and whatnot, services, programs, and everything else the organization has to offer, how can they find you? How can they reach you?
A good place to start is on the website. So the website is ablesaletoronto.com, ABLE Toronto.com. Our email is you can access us by email through the form. So when you fill out the form, that'll go to discover sailing at ablesaletoronto.com. And then you can be contacted that way too. Um, that is the best way to contact us, and that's by email. And we also have Instagram, we have Facebook, we're on LinkedIn too. And also for some young people out there, we hire summer staff every year, and we have one spot left for this year. We hire 6 summer staff. And so that's also a fantastic job opportunity, especially if you're interested in the medical sector.
Well, and that I'm sure is absolutely amazing for all our viewers, for all our listeners, sorry, to know. And that being said, Karen-Ann, thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. And we have such a gorgeous day outside. It's feeling like spring.
Absolutely, absolutely. And hopefully this good weather keeps up. Now, that being said, we've reached the end of yet another amazing interview segment. You're listening to Community Partners presented by Voices for Ability Radio, all abilities, all the time. I'm your host, Davy Au. Be safe, be kind, and I'll see y'all next time.